Hi, Trisha Funk here with financeswithfunk.com. As promised this year, per many requests, I'm going to be doing some more video tutorials this year than I have in the past. And one of the most requested recipes that I get from people that try them, as well as people on the website, is my homemade granola bars. And I make mine a high protein granola bar, but you can utilize this same base recipe and really kind of tweak it and create your specific perfect granola bar for yourself. But the thing that I really want to encourage is absolutely, obviously, something like children's foods, children's snack foods, they're an expensive item when you just go to the grocery store and buy them. And if you're like our house, where predominantly, if you do buy a snack food, it's going to be an organic variety. They're $4 and $5 a box for a box of granola bars that are gone in a few days. So I started about 3 years ago making our own granola bars, and our children love them. They're so good. They're so easy to make. And I think that's why people have requested the granola bar tutorial so much, because it seems kind of like a little bit of a daunting task to do in the first place. So you see it done and you see really truly how easy it is. So let's talk about what you need to make homemade granola bars. First off, you're going to use 2 cups of oats. And what you're going to do is you're just going to throw your oats, and all of your nuts actually are going to go into a pan, into a cookie sheet, whatever you have that you can throw in the oven, because you're going to just toast everything up a little bit. So we have our oats. We also use 3/4 cup of wheat germ, and I just sprinkle that right over the top. If you bought toasted wheat germ, or you have toasted wheat germ, then save it and don't add this into the part that's going into the oven. And then I do 3/4 cups of sunflower seeds. And these are just the raw sunflower seeds. You don't want salt and oil or anything on them already, so just get the raw sunflower seeds. And then you use any combination really that you want, but about 2 cups worth of chopped nuts. So here on the cutting board I have cashews. I have a little bit of cashews and peanuts. We love cashews and peanuts in this house. And then the other thing that I'm going to use is I'm going to use about a cup of chopped almonds. Again, raw, just chopped. You don't want oiled, salted, anything like that in them already. So these, I'm just going to give a quick toss with my hands. Just kind of stir it all up. Shake it right into the pan. And it's going to go in the oven, 400-degree oven, 10 minutes tops. You don't have to like mix it up halfway through. If you want to, that's absolutely fine. It will toast more evenly. It's all going to get smashed together in a granola bar anyway. It really doesn't matter. But in the oven for 400 degrees, and we'll do that in a second. The other thing that you're going to use is we're going to use 4 tablespoons butter. And then the other thing that I use is I use 3/4 cup of apple juice, just organic, 100% apple juice. You can use brown sugar. I like to take these and kind of dope down the sugar a little bit, because we're using honey as well, so, which obviously has quite a bit of natural sugar, but it's still quite a bit of sugar. So I use apple juice, works perfectly fine. You can use brown sugar though. I use the light brown sugar instead of the dark brown to make sure that your granola bars still have that really golden color to them. And then, so I have our local local organic honey. And yes, we do buy it by the gallon. Lasts us about a year. I use it in a ton of different cooking type things. And then the last thing that I add to mine is I add 2 scoops, big scoops of vanilla organic protein powder. If you're not going to, and this is what makes it the high protein granola bars. If you're not going to use the protein powder, it's fine, but use maybe a tablespoon of vanilla, and we'll do that when we get to the wet mixture. So that's the other thing that I use. That is it. That's all that goes in these granola bars. You can identify every single ingredient, which is obviously one of the things I love. So I'm going to pop the oats and nuts in the oven really quick, and then we'll move over to the stove and do the wet ingredient part, which takes, oh, I don't know, about 2 minutes, and we'll show you how to put them all together. So here we are at our wet ingredients part. There's 3 wet ingredients. Unless you're using vanilla, then you would have 4. There's 3 ingredients in our wet ingredients part. Our 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to kick this on. Our 3/4 of a cup of apple juice, or your brown sugar, if you were using brown sugar. Just drop that in. And our 1/2 cup of honey. So I just add everything in at the beginning. You don't have to wait till your butter melts. It's going to melt as it cooks. Just scoop this right in here. Gooey gooey. Doesn't really matter what kind of honey you use. I use local organic honey in a lot of our cooking because I have children with allergies, and the honey, the local honey, really is one of the only things that makes a huge difference and is completely natural. So I use that. You're obviously free to use whatever works for whatever kind of honey you can find, whatever kind of honey your family likes. And we're just going to let the butter melt down, and our sugars, like in our honey, to really liquefy a little bit. Does not take long to do this. If you're using brown sugar, you probably would want to melt your butter down a little bit, because that's going to give it a little bit of liquid to really melt down your brown sugar, as opposed to, obviously all of mine is liquid to start with, so it's not that big of a deal. So give this a little bit of time. And what you'll see is, really, with the apple juice and the honey and the butter, it's just going to turn really, really liquidy. But it's going to get really liquid like water. So just super duper thin, and that's the consistency that you want. This absolutely can be done at the exact same time that you're toasting your nuts, and that way those nuts are still warm when you pour that hot liquid over the top of them. And that's it for this step. So it's getting thin. It's getting thin. Perfect. Okay. So this is, the butter's going to continue to melt a little bit. I'm going to give it a couple more quick little stirs. So just be careful when you're doing this stage, because you don't want to burn you don't want to burn your butter. No, that's not what I was going to say. You don't want to burn your sugar. So if you're, especially if you're using brown sugar, you want to make sure that you're kind of continuing to stir at this phase while you're melting your butter and everything down, because you don't want it to get to that stage where it burns and kind of caramelizes on you. Although caramel is delicious. That's not what we want in the granola bars though. Okay, so this is liquid. I'm getting ready to pull our nuts out of the oven, and I will show you the last step in the process. Okay, are you ready for the last phase? This is the hard part. You have to stir. That's all, really. Oh, dump. You have to dump and then stir. So it is a 2-step process. So here are my toasted nuts. Nice and toasted. A little burnt on the edges, but that's okay. Hate it when I burn my nuts. I'm fairly good at burning things, so. See, if I can cook and I have a ridiculously short attention span, especially when it comes to cooking, then anybody really can do this. So I'm going to dump my nuts in, and my oats, and my wheat germ, that are all toasty, toasty, toasty. Alright, so I have my toasted nuts and my oats and my wheat germ in the bowl. This is when I'm going to add the protein powder, and I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top. That's 2 scoops. You can use 3, you can use 1. Doesn't matter, there's no science. I'm just going to flip it in, because I want it to adhere to the oats and the nuts, and then it makes sure that it's going to get super incorporated. Oh, these nuts are warm. It's going to make sure they get super incorporated when I add my liquid. So there's that. And here's my pouring. Pour it straight over the top. And then I'm just going to mix this up. I'm going to mix it up super duper good. They're going to look really wet. Well, these do look really wet. Did I add 2 cups of oats? I must have. My pan was full. You know, sometimes they look a little gooier than normal. And this, to me, happens to be one of those times. Sometimes they look a little drier. The gooier, they're just going to be a little bit softer. So they're not going to firm up as much, meaning they're going to break. They may break a little bit more on you. Is that a big deal? Not really. What I'm going to do, just for the sake of, because I want to do it, is because these look a little extra soft, it's possible that I didn't measure exactly correct. I'm just going to add a few more oats. No, I didn't measure. I have no idea how much that is. You know, my hand is this big, and I use that much. So, some of you figure that out, if you really need exact measurements. So, it's really truly all mixed up here, and soft. Now the key to actually getting this to set up in a granola bar fashion is going to be basically just time. So we're going to press it into a 9x13 pan and then really press it down. That's a huge part of this process, is making sure that it's pressed down in there. Remove all this out of the way. And so here's my 9x13 pan. And I'm just going to line it with wax paper. And I cut a piece of wax paper that's twice the size so I can wrap it over the top. Put it down in here and dump again. Straight into your 9x13 pan. These smell so good. So here's the process, actually right before the dump, is the process where if you wanted to use raisins, or if you were using macadamia nuts and wanted like some dried pineapple or dried mango, that would go in at the same time, like when I did the protein powder. When I did the vanilla protein powder, you'd want to add anything like that. Coconut, if you're doing macadamia nuts and pineapple, then you could do some coconut in there. Any of that sort of stuff would go in at that point in time, unless you wanted to toast your coconut, which would be super good. So that would go in that process, that stage of the process, before you dump it into your pan. The only thing that you would not want to add at this point in time yet is if you're going to do, mini chocolate chips, because this is uber hot. So you put chocolate chips in right now, and you try to smash it into the pan. It's going to turn into one huge brownie, which is fine. It's going to taste good, but it's just not going to. You're not going to have that look of a chocolate chip granola bar. So if I'm going to add chocolate chips, which a lot of times I do, I will do this stage of the process. Also, if you're going to do like vanilla yogurt chips or something like that, unless you wanted them melted so you could like smear a layer over the top, you could definitely do that as well. You're still going to want to let this set up for a little bit. So I have it kind of pressed in with my spatula. That's not going to do the trick. All right, so I'm going to just fold this over, and then you're going to use pure manpower. And just smush, smush, smush. You're going to smush it as hard as you can. If you have a book, it's fantastic. Like, just take a huge, like the biggest book you can find, huge encyclopedia, and shove this in the top. If you have a pan that's like one size smaller than 9x13, I have one that is being used right now. So I usually take that pan and I just smash it on the top, and then I can use that as leverage to really push it down, because you want to make sure this pressing it down and getting it tight is what's going to keep, like, hold it all together. Really pushing it into the pan like this. But literally, this is the end of the process, is pushing it down into the pan, making sure, and I don't know if you can see on camera, but it's just really compacted in, and I'm going to push it down even more than that. If I'm going to add mini chocolate chips, I'm going to let this sit for probably a good half an hour, because it's still super hot. And then I'm just going to peel back this top layer, sprinkle some mini chocolate chips over the top, and then press those down again and let them sit. They're going to melt a little bit, but not to the extent that it's just going to be one chocolatey mess like the chocolate chips will remain somewhat intact and contain the look of kind of a chocolate chip to it. So that's it.